Hey, hey, hey! It is Off My Bridge time! My name is Guy, and today we are talking about social conflict within Star Trek Adventures 2. Now, social conflict is pretty straightforward when you look at it, but there are some nuances to it, and there are some little tweaks in there which I absolutely love. And all that they are designed to do is to make the social interaction element of the role-playing game, well, actually interesting, as opposed to other systems where, yeah, just roll a dice and, oh, look, you succeed, move forward, that's it. The very first thing that you need to do whenever you are having two characters interacting with one another is you need to determine, are the goals of each character in opposition to one another? If the goals are in alignment with one another, you don't have social conflict. There's no role to be made. But if one character has a goal of guarding the door and another character has the goal of getting through that door, they are in social conflict. And now you can move forward with the social combat process. So that's the first thing to bear in mind when you are looking at social conflict. Are the goals in opposition? If they are, you've got social conflict. Once you have established that there is social conflict, you need to realize that every single social conflict is an opposed role. Resistance is futile. Not really. What we have in a social conflict is you have the requesting character and the resisting character. The requesting character makes a request. Hand over your starship. The resisting character says no. They oppose roles. How does this work? You as the GM need to determine what it is that is going to be rolled. Is it something like presence and command? They roll 2 successes, 3 successes. That determines the difficulty that the resisting character is going to have to achieve. Now, the resisting character is not going to use the same attribute and department roll. They're going to use a different one. You're going to have to decide, is this perhaps insight and security? I can see what you're trying to do. I'm following security protocol. I'm not going to let you through. In which case, they then roll. Whomever achieves more successes wins. Now, in the case of the resisting character achieving more successes, no. That's it. Unless the requesting character changes up their request significantly, they cannot proceed any further. It's as simple as that. If, on the other hand, the requesting character achieves more successes, the resisting character does not just go, oh, well, you won, all right, fine, through you go, you can go through the door. No, the resisting character has 2 choices. Either they can yield, in which case head on through, or they can continue to resist. But now, what happens is, and this is the part I love, is that the resisting character now takes stress equal to the number of successes that the requesting character rolled. So if the requesting character rolled 1 success, the resisting character takes 1 damage, or 1 stress. If the requesting character succeeded with 4, the resisting character takes 4 stress. And so it goes on and on and on until the character stops, until the character says, I've lost enough stress, I give in, through you go. Then, on top of that, we then have social tools. And the social tools make it a little bit more interesting. Because there's not just one way to ask somebody something. When you are attempting to intimidate them, move or I will kill you, you might not be willing to actually kill them. And if you're playing the Federation, that's a very unlikely threat that's going to get followed through. More likely you'll stun them. However, intimidation is an absolutely viable tactic. So once again, you are going to make your roll, and you are creating, if you will, the trait intimidated. So firstly, you make a roll to create the intimidation trait. The GM must decide what this is going to be. Probably physical characteristics more than anything else, unless you're trying to intimidate them in the sly or subtle way. If you don't move, I'm going to kill everybody on the starship that I have control over. So the GM decides, the roll is made. If the roll is successful, this means that the trait intimidation has now been created. The intimidated character should now have penalties to their rolls. Maybe the difficulty is increased by 1, so the number of successes that the requester now is making increases by 1. Or perhaps the complication range is greater. It's up to you really to decide on what you want to do here. However, what is important and is stressed in the rules is that an intimidated character, although they are more likely to submit, once they realize they were being intimidated, moving forward, it becomes more difficult to do that again because they are aware, hey, you intimidated me, but you didn't follow through on your threat. It was an empty threat. So I'm not going to be intimidated by you any further. This could be, again, expressed as a difficulty increase or as a complication range increase. That's with intimidation. The second type of social tool is deception. I'm going to lie to you. You need to move out of the way because if you don't, the door's going to explode and you're going to die. Creating deceptions, pretty much like intimidation, is a false thing. You are creating a trait, deceived, which makes it easier for the character to be convinced their difficulty for resisting goes up or their complication range increases. Either way, the deception, once the character is no longer under the influence of the deception, you've left the scene, they realize, wait, that was a lie, they're going to get angry. And that's going to make them more difficult moving forward. In actual fact, they might actually start hunting the character down. So with intimidation and with deception, an antagonistic environment is created after the social interaction has happened. If you want to avoid that, there are 2 other ways of going about it. They're a little bit more difficult, but they are a better approach. The first one is called evidence. As a social tool, evidence is literally about your character presenting evidence. This door is going to explode. You can feel the heat coming off of it already. The evidence must be real. If it isn't real evidence, then you are creating a deception. Straightforward. On the other hand, if the door is actually warm because perhaps the chief engineer has shunted some plasma through a nearby EPS conduit, which is causing the door to feel warm, that's a complicated deception, but it's real. It exists. The door is warm. So evidence is an accumulation. The more evidence you create, the stronger your chances of success. One piece of evidence is highly unlikely to convince anybody. But if you have 2 or 3 pieces of evidence, well then suddenly your success chance should increase appropriately. The door's going to explode. It's getting hot. You can hear explosions behind the door. And also, I'm taking cover behind this table over here. So you should join me at this table. Get away from it. That's 3 points of evidence. However many you feel is necessary for the scene to play through. Someone who's incredibly antagonistic against the player characters needs a lot of evidence. Someone who just needs a little bit of evidence, they probably will be easier to convince. The final option is negotiation. And negotiation is where you are presenting something in exchange for something else. You have to actually give that something as well. Here's a bag of latinum to go away. That is negotiation, straight up and straight simple. If the character, of course, doesn't want latinum, they would rather have a drink, well, then they might go, well, that's very nice, but I don't want that. I want something else. You need to go and get me a drink, and then I'll move. So negotiation has this wonderful backwards and forwards, and you need to discover exactly what it is that the character wants. As GM, you could be asking for things like insight and medicine, because you can see that they're hungry. You could do insight plus command, because you realize that they are lacking direction in their life. You can choose which check you're going to ask for. But ultimately, it's about negotiating backwards and forwards and supplying the goods. Now, I would like to deceive you into clicking that like button. Or perhaps I should negotiate with you. If you click that like button, I'll make more videos. How about that? So hit that like button and more videos will happen. Don't hit the like button and, well, let's just say if you and I are in the same sector of space next time, we might have words. Anyway, until next time, I wish you long life and happy gaming.